Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Cleaning Lady, Season 3, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're immediately picking up in the aftermath of last episode, where the coyote shows up and where Tony thought she'd be waiting for Chris and Fee. They're not there, and the guy is making excuses of kind of like, oh yeah, they got left behind, yada yada. Like, he got a little nervous the moment he saw, like, when Tony showed him Fee and Chris's photo. It's like, yeah, that's on you. You were up to some BS, and that's why they got left behind. So, also, last thing you want is your employers, like, who, like, give you the money to do all this. The last thing you want is them to find out that you were up to some shady stuff, because that ruins their business and their reputation. So, you know, it has that element to it. So, but we don't see him suffer any ramifications, because even later on, Jorge's like, yeah, the coyote told me this. It's like, yeah, so they're going to believe whatever BS he spewed about it, because he wasn't involved with this. It was interesting, too, because, like, Tony was like, no, he's going to go out there and get Chris and, Fee, because he's the only one that knows roughly where they were. He pointed it out on a map, but Home Dude was like, no, like, his part is over. So I'm almost wondering, did they find out he was up to some shady stuff and took him out, or it's just kind of like, are they just not going to employ him as a coyote anymore? That's the last time we see the guy, so who knows what befalls him, and it's kind of irrelevant at this point in time, I guess. But either way, Tony's desperate to get after Fee and Chris, and obviously JD and Jazz are waiting on pins and needles to try and find out what happens, but Tony's not telling them anything. It's like, hey, I just need you to look after Luca while I go do this, which JD also knows a complicated situation she's in. It's like, right, she's got like a thing, like Susan's gonna stop by for like a thing with Luca in like 2 days, but also they have an interview tomorrow too, so she has to be there for that. So she needs to find Fee and Chris and immediately come back. So it was interesting, too, because she convinced those guys, like, yeah, Dante said that I could come along, and they were out there until Jorge showed up and stopped them, which I was like, what's the point of that? I mean, I guess it worked in the long run, because if Tony had gone with them, it wouldn't have worked out the way it did with Jorge. So I think it's kind of a win-win situation of like, it worked out in the end, because they wouldn't have gone as far, wouldn't have pushed as hard as like Jorge would have. Even he was kind of willing to give up in certain moments, but being around Tony was able to persuade him in a way I don't think she would have been able to persuade those other two that were driving her. Because I guess it's like, you're too much of an investment. We have too much invested in you. You owe a lot to us for everything we've done. So last thing we need is you out here in the desert potentially getting yourself killed, especially if Border Patrol catches you and grabs you. It's like, that's where we come out losing on that regard. So I guess that's why he did that, why he decided to kind of take matters in his own hand and did come and get Tony and bring her back. But what Tony did say, like, right, what if it was your daughter? Would you want them to give up? It's like, this is my family. This isn't just like my sister-in-law. Like, Fee is just straight up my sister at this point in time. So, and obviously, like, her and Chris mean the world to me, so I need to do this. Because it's like, especially when Jorge found out, like, whoa, you got a thing for with Luca, like, you need to get back to that immediately. He understands as a single parent. It's like I said, it's what I thought too. I thought that Jorge and her would kind of connect, just like her and Armand got close. It's like Tony just has that effect on people, and obviously has an even closer connection with Jorge, because they're both like single parents. Granted, we don't know about Jorge's circumstances or whatever happened to his daughter's mom, or whether she just died, or whether I'd assume she died and she's just not in the situation, of she's just not in the picture, but who knows? I mean, that might even make them even more connected because of the whole Marco situation of it all for, in Tony's case. But, but like I said, I figured he was going to play a little bit of an Armand role for her in this case, of like, he's going to be like the bad guy with a heart of gold type of situation, like how Armand went above and beyond for Tony, especially when it came to Luca, and that he has that he can be sensitive and good-natured too. Like, he comes off like the bad guy, because in their line of business, that's who you have to be. Once again, like him and because him and Armand are cousins. It's like, yeah, like, they are a lot more alike than they're both become hardened because of life necessitated it. But they are, at their core, can be good people. At least it appears. Once again, we don't fully know Jorge enough You know, I mean, even Armand could still backslide into doing some very bad stuff despite the good natured stuff of who he is, because that's who he is at his core. But he had to become like transform into who he is just to survive in the world. So once again, I'm assuming Jorge's the same way, but you know, everyone wears different masks, so he could be putting on a mask, or maybe his mask is finally starting to slip like it did with Armand. We'll have to wait and see, but. At the same time, this was going down. Obviously, Chris, Fee, and Camilla are making it on their own. Obviously, they don't know where they're following power lines, hoping it'll lead them to civilization. But when they do follow them, it's like, cool. It's just further power lines in both directions, and it's like there's no guarantee like there's any civilization within walking distance. So it's to the point Chris was kind of disheartened, especially as they're walking along this path. They're finding so much stuff that was lost, and it's like, right, these are so many people who might not have made it. But Fee's like, no. These people were desperate. Look like Camilla and her mom, like coming from desperate circumstances to get here. They didn't come here just to die. They persevered. It's like, right, you're scared and you're worried. I get it. But you need to persevere. You can't think bad thoughts in this situation. Plenty of people walked this trail and made it because they didn't give up and didn't die. But obviously what really struck her Fee was she saw a little girl's shoe, and it's like, oh wow, like we don't know what happened to this little girl. And it just, because she was trying to be strong for Chris's sake, and it's just when you're trying to be so strong for someone else, it kind of gives you strength, but while you're focusing on making sure Chris is okay, it kind of put her in a vulnerable state, and it just made she needed to keep his hopes up to potentially keep her hopes up. And you know, Chris was there to kind of comfort her, and they thought they found water, but nope. Which I found out about some. I don't know if this is a real thing. Is it a real thing, or is it just for the show? I looked it up because I felt like I remembered hearing something like that being real. I was like, that can't be a real thing, but I do feel like I vaguely remember hearing about that in news. Looking it up, it is a real thing. There are vigilante border patrol people, and it's like, well, I'm sure a conversation will be had of, well, oh, they paid us, it's like we're monsters or something like that. I'm sure that discussion could be potentially had about someone who might be about that or supports that, seeing this episode feeling a certain way about it. It's just like, I don't know, man. It's a tricky, to me, like taking the law in your own hands. I get it. Like I like enough superhero stuff and vigilanteism. I get it, but it also gets into that weird territory of like you taking matters in your own hand. Like I said, it's a double-edged sword of like, I can see the good side of it, but I also see how horrendously wrong. Maybe I'm also being extremely biased because I have my own personal opinion about, you know, like especially like immigration. Like I'm more pro-immigration than I'm not, and I'm more understanding of the illegal side of it. I know people have their, like, it's a very lengthy conversation, and I understand the positions on both sides. I probably lean more one side than the other in the conversation, but it's like, that's why I'm also a little biased, because it's like, hey, these Border Patrol agents are going after, you know, innocent people, so it's like, you know, especially because some of the characters we follow in this story are mixed up in this too, so it makes you even more sympathetic. Even if it wasn't Fee, Chris, and Camilla, like, I'd still be like, oh, that sucks. Especially because they're like, yo, they set up there's these water tanks or whatever, but they busted them or shot them so that the water would drain out, just to kind of screw over any illegal immigrants that might be crossing the border that might be out here in that area, just to make sure they're more likely to die. Or it's kind of meant to be a trap of like, oh, they'll come here and we'll be ready to strike type of situation. I think in all intents and purposes, it's a very fucked up circumstances. I don't know about the real world stuff. I can't fully comment on that because I don't know enough. At least in the context of this episode, I can at least strongly say, personally, I think it's an extremely fucked up situation. But, you know, that's just me. Once again, maybe that's just a extreme leftist in me or something, you know? Either way. But yeah, like, that was just kind of a rough situation. And, you know, especially when Fee went off on her own, I was like, oh, please don't go off on your own. Especially because when Tony and Jorge are there, I was like, they're looking for you. They'll find Chris and Camilla, but who's to say they'll find Fee, especially if she's out and about. I was like, come on, dude. But it's understandable. Chris is like, you know, very badly, like, I think he's probably heat strokes finally get to him, especially because partway through it, he gave his hat to Camilla, so I'm sure that ended up protecting her a little bit from the sun beating down on their heads. But Camilla ended up helping him because I think she cut open a cactus. I mean, there's always that thing of like, cactuses do have water, but I guess maybe certain aspects of a cactus can act as medicinal stuff, like because she was saying like a cactus, and she had maybe a certain portion of it, if you cut it off, can act as like I don't think it was just for the purposes of water. I think it was like, as she described it, like medicine. So it's like I never knew that there was like I'm sure there's a lot of plants that serve medicinal purposes, but I've never heard of cactuses being used in that capacity. But that was kind of the first time I've ever heard it. I've always heard about the water thing when it came to cactuses, but even that's not like, I don't know how true that is, because I think maybe it's like such a small amount in cactuses that it's not even worth it maybe. But like I said, for medicinal purposes, this was like the first time I'd ever come across that. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting because just as Fee and Chris were in that position of losing faith, in that same area, it's where Tony kind of broke down too, because they came across a dead body, and she's blaming herself. She's like, I'm the reason why Fee's in this situation in the first place. Because of me, she got mixed up in all of this, and she got deported. It's like everyone else around me always has to suffer the ramifications of my decisions. So, and she's feeling the most guilty in this regard too, because, her and Jorge had this whole back and forth of, the bad stuff that he's done, but he's like, yeah, I'm sure you've done stuff too. She's like, yes, I'm sorry, I have done stuff to protect my family, just like I know you would do the same thing too. We've both kind of done stuff just for the sake of protecting our family, because they have no trails to go to, because he was suggesting we might as well call Border Patrol. They might get picked up, and yes, your sister might get sent back to the Philippines, but at the very least, she'll be okay. She'll be alive, and you might not be with them, and Chris might get sent back. At least he met his father, and he had family there, but it's still it's not the world he knows. His sister's here too, Luca's here too, so it's like his entire life's here, so he may be missing out on that, but at least him and his mom would be alive, and that was kind of the point that Jorge was trying to get across. I mean, obviously, this episode is meant to kind of show you Jorge in a very different light than we've seen him thus far. But I kind of saw in between the rough exterior, like I said, very Armand-esque kind of trajectory his character's having. But especially when they were driving there, he's blasting music. And he's like, oh, come on, Tony. Listen, this is a great band or whatever. I'm like, why you gotta do this is like a vacation trip or something, homie? You're looking for Fee and Chris. And he's like, yeah, you get to bust down through the desert at 100 miles per hour. And it's like, because he's kind of telling her to kind of cut loose a little bit and kind of have fun. But she's like, oh, I see what it is, right? Single father, looking for this is your opportunity to kind of cut loose and everything. She's like, I get it. Sometimes you just want that time to yourself to be able to do whatever you want to that you normally can't when you're in parent mode. I get it, So that was just kind of interesting seeing kind of that more levity side of things. Because once again, we've always seen him in a very serious manner. They eventually caught up to where Chris and Camilla were, but by the time they got there, they were already gone. I was like, no, but it's like, well, Chris is hurt. He couldn't have gotten that far, could he? But it's because Fee, had almost given up hope again, but she came across some other people crossing the border, and one of them ended up being the little girl. She has one of the shoes on her backpack, so it's like, okay, she's okay. She just ended up dropping one of her shoes on the way, and there's a truck to pick them up and take them. I guess maybe this is no, because it's not the other truck. I was wondering if this is a truck that had Camilla's mom, but it's like, no, I guess it's just another truck. I don't know if it's related to Ramona's operation or not, or whether this is just a separate, coyote situation. It seems like it probably has nothing to do with it, but it just maybe happened to be taking a break at that time, and they came across Fee, and Fee's begging him, please help my son. But I guess there's no way Chris would have made it on his own there, so it had to be a situation of Fee must have pointed them in the right direction, and then they picked him up, and then they drove off. But either way, Chris and Camilla are with Fee, so I'm like, oh damn. I mean, at least they're together. But it's like, man, Tony and Jorge, God, I was blanking on the name there for a second, just missed them, and I was like, oh, come on, dude, they're always just one step behind. And then they ran into the vigilante border patrol people who were, kind of the people you'd expect them to be, and they're super happy about it. It's like, oh yeah, we rounding up this truck. It was pretty sick, one of the people later on being like, yeah, we'll leave some alive for you. I'm like, regardless of how you feel about it, you could like detained him or something. Like, I don't know, man. You're so quick to kill people. I mean, hell, they even killed the driver. I'm like, yo, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you regardless of it all, like you're telling me that them just killing a dude behind the like seat of a like car. I'm like, how effed up that is. That's super fucked, dude. And because like the car got damaged and the engine's still on, like the monoxide is starting to kick in, is picking up inside the truck, and they can't open it from the inside, so now they're dying of monoxide poisoning. It's like, oh my god. Luckily, Fee finds a screwdriver. She's poking enough holes in there for everyone, and that speaks. Look, it's Fee not only looking out for, you know, Chris and Camilla, she's also putting holes in there for everyone. That's why she passes out, because she ended up, you know, absorbing the most carbon monoxide because she was so busy helping other people. And it's like, good on you, Fee. Like, shows you what kind of a good person Fee is. And luckily, Tony and Jorge showed up in time, and Tony was able to resuscitate her. I'm like, okay, I figured, I was like, there's no way they're going to kill Fee. It's all going to work out, and luckily it did. I thought we were going to have more of an issue, but I guess after those vigilante Border Patrol people, like, shot the driver, they just bounced. I guess they're like, oh, we'll leave him here, let the desert handle him, which is ironic, because Fee and, Tony and Jorge did the same thing to the other people, because it's like, oh, like, let's leave him out here. Like, Tony, because, like, Jorge destroyed their quad vehicle. So it's like, yeah, if you're going to be out here in the desert on your own. And also, I keep doing that, sorry. Tony left the woman a water bottle just to help her. But Jorge's like, nah, like, they want to treat us like animals. Let's see how they like it. And he shoots the water bottle. I was like, poetic justice. Like, yeah, maybe you'll be fortunately able to get out of here. Maybe not. So... yeah, they're also like handcuffed. Yeah, I think they're handcuffed in the desert too, so that doesn't help. So I hope Tony and Jorge took the radio too, so they can't call for backup. Maybe that's also why they left, because they heard about their buddies in trouble. So maybe that's why the other agents immediately like, oh, we'll leave them out here to die in the desert. Oh, but we got a call from the others. Maybe that's what happened. So either way, it all worked out in the end. It's interesting, too, how that it's all happening, because obviously Jazz has her conflicted feelings about everything, because it's like, right, I know Aunt Tony kind of screwed up, but at the very least, she's trying to make things right. So obviously, it's about JD and Tony bumping heads, because JD realizes, like, oh, like, whatever means you're using to get Chris and Fee back, it's the same stuff that got Fee into trouble last season. But it's like, yeah, it's just they both have two different ways of going about. Like, he wants to go about things the right way. Tony goes about things whatever way she can, by whatever means, if it means protecting and helping the people she cares about. I mean, obviously there was a conversation of, does Tony like this world a little bit? It's like, yeah, she's found her own place and pacing in it, but it's not like she enjoys every aspect of it. But it's like a thing of like, oh, because that was what set off that conversation in the car was, oh, you enjoy the chaos, don't you, Tony? It's like, I don't think she does. The chaos just happens to help benefit her in a lot of ways, but it's also screwed her over a lot of ways. It's given Luca more time. It's put him in a more healthy situation, but it's cost her family a lot in the long run. So I'm curious to see where the JD and Tony of it all lands in the aftermath of all of this, because it's like, right, Tony's not, you know, once again, Tony has continuously had to double, in fact, triple down on like the dangerous world she's mixed up in just for the sake of the people around her. So that's not going away anytime soon, even with Fee and Chris's return, because they're still looking for Armand. So she's still in debt to Ramona and them. So it's very, very interesting and very complicated. Tony does later on show Jorge the thing she found in the truck last episode, and it ended up being dragon's breath. So I guess like maybe someone very specifically is dealing that, and Jorge says he's going to look into it. And this kind of goes back to the point I'd made previously. I don't think Jorge's behind this. I do strongly, my thoughts are leaning more toward Ramona, because she's the one that's pushing so hard. I'm like, oh, we'll find Armand. And it's like, I feel like she might have a part to play in this. Maybe we'll find out it really is Jorge, but I'm giving him I'm really vibing and thinking it's Ramona that's behind this, but I don't know for sure, because both of them seem so suspicious, because we don't know them enough. It's like, yeah, they're both like, yeah, we'll search for Armand, but it's like, right, they just happen to have the van. They picked up the van from the junkyard that just happened to be used to kidnap Armand. It's just like, I don't know, man. Because even what's her face? Nadia said this episode, she brought up like, right, I don't know who Armand was working with. He kept that information from me. So it could, maybe he was working with them and things went sideways. Like, you know, like I said, maybe there's some people making some dealings, but like it could have been someone that's connected to the Ramona that was making some deals, or maybe someone who found out about Armand and Ramona potentially working together, or I don't know. Because Armand's kind of on his own. He's a sole operation. So unless they know that him and Ramona have a connection, like why would you kidnap him? And for what purpose? Like who would you use him against leverage for? Like Nadia, sure. But I don't know if people know Nadia enough to kind of be like, oh, like it'll be worth using him as leverage. Like it feels like it would be leverage against like Jorge or Ramona. But that's why I keep getting caught up in. I just don't know who to trust. That's the position both Nadia and Tony are in, which I think is so beautifully interesting too, that, oh, we can't trust anyone. Nadia's not turning to Tony, but who does she turn to? Ramona, while at the same time Tony is getting closer to Jorge. So it's interesting how that all works out. But speaking of Nadia, she gets a visit from Ramona and Jorge after she, early in the episode when she had went to a guy to a bounty hunter to basically look for Armand, but they were like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. Because I understand you want to find Armand, you want to do something about it, great, but you make reckless moves and decisions that could potentially put Armand in even more harm's way, so you have to be careful about the way you move. That's why they've always tried to scare Nadia into like submission of like not making moves without them. But it's like, hey, you're familia because Armand is family, your family too, by extension. So we're here to look after you. And then like Russo's at the bar, so it's like good thing Ramona nor Jorge recognize or realize she's FBI, nor does she recognize who they are. Cause I mean, I don't know if she could really like. It looked like she kind of looked towards Nadia's office, so she probably doesn't know them off the top of her head either. Wouldn't recognize them as cartel people. So, but either way, Russo said like it was flagged that she like pulled out that $1 million, and it's like, right, what are you up to? You might be up to some shady dealings. So all of Kamdar's funds and stuff are going to be frozen, so you can't dip your toe into that to kind of use that with the whole finding Armand situation. Because once again, Russo's got no love for Armand. She made it clear, I'm going to take him down. And it's like, right, you're going to get yourself into some dangerous situation, mix up with some very bad people. She's trying to put Nadia in a position where Nadia has no choice but to turn to her. But when she eventually comes back, her safe was cracked open, and whoever it was that has Armand is threatening, like, hey, give me $100 million or this is over. Like, Armand's life is in danger, which $100 million is very specific. Like, you're looking for any large amount of number, but like, wasn't that the money she was going to pay home dude? It's like, right, you'll get $1 million now, but then like once you find out Armand, you can get whatever you want. Like, wasn't she offering him $100 million? Maybe she wasn't. Maybe I'm being stupid. I thought she did. But that also becomes a thing of like, well, did he betray her? Is he behind Armand's disappearance, or was he captured and tortured for information, and now they're using that information to make a deal for Armand for $100 million? Nadia was initially going to call Russo, but she calls Ramona, kind of tells her like, hey, the FBI are involved, they froze funds, and it's like, oh, thank you for telling me. I also love the reveal that, oh, Nadia has Russo saved in her phone as Auntie Kate. Because I was about to say, it'd probably be an issue if Russo's number just popped up or whatever, which it does, but it's like, oh, that's just Auntie Kate, so it's fine. It's like, I like that. Got to cover up your trails in case, I guess, anyone just happens to look through your phone records and be like, who's this? You know? Then we had the ending of the episode, which even I was kind of getting nervous when Ramona wants to meet her on top of a building. I was like, is she about to toss you off a building? I was like, did she find the guy who, the bounty hunter you went to, and she tossed him off a building or is going to toss him off the... I'm like, I don't know, this is making me nervous. It's like, oh, it's so cold up here. Like, oh, come over here. Oh my God, you're trembling. I'm like, there's no way she's going to just... She made the whole point of, hey, your family, but I'm like, did she find out that Nadia's talking to Russo? It's like, I mean, you could still use her, so would you be so quick to kill her off? But it's like, no. Either Ramona knows and she's not saying anything, she's keeping that in her back pocket, or she just is completely unaware. She did kind of give this nod to like Dante, where I was like, what's going on with that? They kind of had some acknowledgement. I guess maybe he's the one that set up the bomb at her place, because their plan is, well, Russo froze, well, not Russo, because, no specifics, but the FBI froze your funds, so this way you get the insurance policy from that terrible club, and it's like, yeah, so now you've got money in your pocket, plus we will help support you find Armand, so it all works out at the end. But I'm like, wow. Wasn't expect, because even Nadia was kind of clutching her chest, like, oh, did not know where this situation was going. Oh, it sucks you blew up my club, but hey, it all works in the end. I don't care as long as I'm able to find Armand. Like I said, it's so interesting how, and I think this is going to lead to a further divide amongst not only Tony and Nadia. It's like, right, we're both kind of working with the same people for the purposes, but they're both closer to other people. Like, Tony's closer to Jorge, whereas Nadia's closer to Ramona, and that might in itself lead to a bigger divide than... I mean, there already is a divide between Jorge and Ramona, because they both have different visions of how the cartel should be run, but this is going to lead to it even more of division of lines. Once again, especially not knowing, like, which one of them is responsible. Is it Ramona, which, like I said, that's where I'm more leaning, or is it going to be Jorge? We'll ultimately have to wait to see where all this goes. But I mean, obviously, so that's where things kind of stand on the more crime side of things. Like I said, everything worked out in the end. It seems like Camilla, by the end, like a caseworker or something, I guess, shows up to potentially take her to her mom. So, and Chris gave her his number, so it's like, hey, call whenever you want to. So it all works out in the end. There's still obviously the more crime side of things that needs to be resolved, but the family, normal life stuff has been resolved. But we still have to contend with, like, social workers and stuff like that, like Susan. So, I mean, luckily Fee's back to kind of help with that. So, we'll see ultimately where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.